Grand Admiral Thrawn is the undisputed genius of strategy. While we often highlight the skills of Jedi, the powers of the Sith, and the raw brutality of the Mandalorians, one man stands among them despite having no powers whatsoever. None except the brilliance of an intelligent mind. Thrawn has gone up against all manner of enemies, and Jedi are no exception to this. However, he seems to have a special way when it comes to dealing with the Jedi. Many Imperial Moffs struggle even against a lone Jedi. Even the untrained ones have skills that they cannot seem to predict or to overcome. Yet, Thrawn has gone up against some of the most dangerous Jedi and come out on top. So what are his secrets? How does this cunning war tactician deal with the endless variables presented by the powers of the Jedi? Well, lore junkies, welcome back to the archives. Today's holocron we will be revisiting Thrawn, a man who we haven't documented in a very long time. With that being said, if there are other more obscure characters that you would like us to look into, please let us know. The holocrons are as infinite as the Force itself. You need only seek out what you desire to see most, and now it is our job to deliver. So guys, let's go ahead and begin. Most average individuals in the galaxy find themselves at an incredible disadvantage against forceful beings, especially Jedi, those who are trained to use it. Most military tacticians just try to outthink the Jedi as individuals, but that only gets them so far due to a Jedi's precognition and penchant for the unorthodox. Even when it seems like a general has a Jedi dead to rights, they seem to find their escape one way or another. And if one tries to engage them in close quarters combat, they usually are out of luck, unless of course they've got a fully equipped suit of armor and over 10 years of specialized training. Someone like Revan has a droid like HK-47, a droid that has developed clever ways of using technology against the Jedi. But by and large, there are very few straightforward ways to dealing with force powers, except for one solution. A solution used brilliantly by Thrawn. The Grand Admiral is a man who looks outside of the box for solutions. He has studied art, architecture, and living habits of his enemies before ever engaging them on the open field. And oftentimes, he'll draw inspiration from the planets that he's encountered before. Thrawn is very much a use every part of the buffalo type of individual. There are few things that escape his notice as being useful. One of these, of course, is the Ysalamiri. Thrawn exploited this seemingly random reptile to perfection during his rampage against the New Republic and against Luke Skywalker's Jedi Order. The Ysalamiri were reptilian creatures native to the planet of Merkur. Their key feature was the ability to project a bubble around themselves that negated the use of the Force entirely. This was a feature that they had developed in response to their natural predators, force-sensitive pack-like animals known as the Vornskurs, which are able to detect prey using the Force. Ysalamiri developed the ability to cloak themselves, projecting these bubbles in order to keep the Vornskurs from locating them. But the real kicker is this, that in groups, the Ysalamiri bubbles will extend and even overlap, resulting in vast areas in which the Force cannot penetrate. Almost the entire forest of the planet of Merkur is a Force-negative zone, and Jedi are especially powerless and vulnerable here. Thrawn would eventually acquire the Ysalamiri after having a run-in with a wealthy smuggler by the name of Talon Karjay, whose base was located on the world of Merkur. To prevent the Ysalamiri from dying after they were taken from their trees though, Imperial engineers designed nutrient-infused pipe frames that could be worn on the backs of the individuals. Thrawn had squads of his men wearing these reptiles on their backs so that they were now completely immune from Force attacks, even by Luke Skywalker and other Jedi. Thrawn would even go as far as to keeping several Ysalamiri with him at all times, especially on his commander's chair. This was to protect him against the mad clone of the Jedi Master Jorah Sabaoth. Their Force negation ability was so complete, in fact, that Sabaoth's Force lightning fizzled into nothing within a foot of the Grand Admiral. This is a Force ability generated through pure hatred, something that was extremely difficult to learn and even more difficult to master, and the single animal negated it entirely. This also worked to protect certain areas or people that the Jedi could sense. Just like with the Vornskurs, Jedi were not able to touch areas that contained Ysalamiri. Luke Skywalker would describe it as being a big mute hole in the Force, a wall that he could not penetrate no matter what he attempted. But while the use of these reptiles was indeed impressive, Thrawn was not a one-trick individual. Back in his youth, before he ever knew of the Ysalamiri, he had other ways of dealing with the Jedi. During the outbound flight incident, Thrawn ran aground with a group of Jedi led by the real Jorah Sabaoth. Here he learned how to establish contingencies for dealing with Force sensitives ahead of time. Joruus had survived Thrawn's initial assault and went after him in a rage. Reaching out with the Force across space, Joruus attempted to Force choke the Grand Admiral. But Thrawn had anticipated such an attack being made in desperation, and so before Joruus had decided to do this, Thrawn pre-programmed his droid starfighters to kamikaze into the outbound flight's bridge while carrying radiation bombs, but to only do so at his signal. Once he felt himself begin to be choked, he gave the signal and the Jedi never saw it coming. This ruthless surprise attack instantly killed the real Jorah Sabaoth, while he was tunnel visioning killing Thrawn from his own ship. In this instance, Thrawn literally expected the unexpected. Almost paradoxically, Thrawn was such a genius that he predicted that the Jedi may pull something that he could not anticipate. Not only this, but he planned ahead for it and executed his plan brilliantly. Only the Grand Admiral would be able to outpredict a Jedi's own precognition. This just goes to show the lengths one has to go through when facing Force wielders. Their powers allowed them to do supernatural things that can't usually be accounted for. But Thrawn was well aware of their ability to always have an ace in the hole, so he always ensured that he had an ace himself. Speaking of aces, there is another tactic that he uses to foil their keen senses. As we mentioned earlier, Thrawn fully understands the art of learning everything you can about your enemy. As for the Jedi, Thrawn is well aware of their legendary compassion. The natural thing for him to do then is to ruthlessly exploit it. In canon, he did this by showing Ezra Bridger a Jedi's moral weakness. During the Battle of Lothal, he threatened to bombard the entire city capital, regardless of the fact that it was under Imperial occupation. He was betting on just how much Ezra cared about his home, and believed that he would surrender without condition if they were threatened. And Thrawn is the man who rarely bluffs. He disables the city's planetary shield and positions his ship right above the city. In this instance, he used a threat to exploit a young Ezra's duty and his compassion. But many years before this, during the outbound flight crisis yet again, he did something much more sinister. Thrawn understood the Jedi often become distracted by disturbances in the Force, and he believed that this would be a key to victory over them. This can cause a Jedi immense grief and even mental pain that could be used to his advantage. Naturally, being the cruel pragmatist that he is, he sought to create his own disturbance and to use it as a weapon. Upon luring the outbound flight Jedi into a confrontation, he activated his own version of Order 66, having pre-programmed droids turn on and massacre thousands of beings at once in the Jedi's presence. The sudden and instantaneous loss of life weakened the Jedi substantially, working better than Thrawn anticipated, as all of their senses were overwhelmed by raw carnage. While the Jedi were weakened, he ordered his forces to attack the outbound flight. They successfully damaged the hull and breached the ship's critical systems before any Jedi could recover. This irrevocably doomed the outbound flight and all on board the vessel. This was an undeniably evil act, but one that had to be taken if he were to successfully destroy the Jedi opposition, and Thrawn knew it. He wasn't evil, he was tactical to the most extreme degree. While it seems out of character for Thrawn to do this, he is also a man who prizes the good of many lives over the few. The Outbound Flight Project was a Jedi-led expedition sent to explore and to chart the unknown regions. However, the trajectory that they held would have put them on a collision course with the Yuuzhan Vong. The Chiss Ascendancy were the only beings in the hemisphere of space that knew the danger posed by the Vong, and did not want the Jedi to disturb them as they laid restless in space. That could potentially launch a full galactic invasion from their race. Thrawn originally attempted to reason with Outbound Flight, but Jorah Sabaoth refused to listen to him. Believing that he had no other options, Thrawn sought to stop a galactic-wide calamity by any means necessary, even if that meant partial genocide and mass murdering a group of Jedi. Grand Admiral Thrawn is one of the rarest individuals in the galaxy, not because of his species or his station, but because of his mind. Unlike most Imperial officers who relied only on brute force, intimidation, or blind loyalty to Palpatine, Thrawn approached warfare as an art. His genius was in his uncanny ability to unlock the patterns in psychology. By understanding how civilizations express themselves creatively, Thrawn could anticipate their strategies and predict their mistakes, even counter them. This made him completely alien among humans in the Imperial hierarchy, not just for being a Chiss, but for his ability to win wars before the first shot was ever fired. What set Thrawn apart even more was his proven ability to stand against all Force wielders, even when logic dictated that he should be overmatched. In a galaxy where the Jedi and Sith often bent reality through sheer power, Thrawn relied solely on intellect, preparation, and to being unshakably calm. He compensated for his lack of Force sensitivity with an unparalleled understanding of its users. He studied their habits, philosophies, weaknesses. Where many who faced Jedi and Sith were paralyzed by fear, Thrawn treated the Force as another factor on the battlefield, one to be dissected and then neutralized. Thrawn's campaigns in the post-Endor era demonstrate this rare talent. With only fragments of the once mighty Imperial Navy at his disposal, he orchestrated a campaign that nearly toppled the New Republic. Even when facing Luke Skywalker, Leia Organa, and other legendary Force wielders, he remained composed, adapting his tactics to situations that could have been insurmountable. He leveraged cloning technology, Ysalamiri, and his own tactical brilliance to turn disadvantages into advantages. Every move was calculated. Every sacrifice was a part of a greater design. In this way, Thrawn became something extraordinary, a mortal who stood on equal footing with Jedi and Sith, not through mysticism, but through the sheer rarity of his mind. This is who the Grand Admiral is. He thinks things through, he's efficient, and he has a plan for everything. Not even supernatural powers or precognition can stand against him when he has prep time. And this is how he became virtually untouchable by the Jedi. Hopefully when Ahsoka Season 2 rolls around, we'll get to see more of this ruthlessness and cunning action. But what are your thoughts, lore junkies? Are there other parts of taking down Jedi that you yourself have theorized about? Let us know in the comments down below. And as always, thank you so much for joining us today in the archives, and may the Force be with you.